I just want to make sure that we're not being unrealistic about what we should be expecting for Black men who were the children of those that were the biggest victims of the crack generation. So when you're talking about men that are in their late 20s, early 30s in particular, I give them a lot of props for the fact that they were able to do better than like their drug dealing parents or their crack whore mothers. You know, I don't think that we give enough credit to those guys that grew up in these very devastating environments between 1975 to today. That period has been very tough for a lot of Black men, specifically from any outside forces. We know that that's the case because all we got to do is look on the streets of urban America. And in that same time period, 1975 to 2020, the Black man has become the face of homelessness. And we have more homeless people on the streets than at any other time since probably the damn Great Depression, more than likely, if not more. So I think that sometimes you got to sit back. If you're a Black man that's able to just be able to take care of yourself out here, you know, you got a job that pays your rent. You got a job that feeds you. You're able to house yourself. Shit, considering some of the environments some of these brothers have come through, bouts of homelessness, couch hopping, no direction, no family mission statement. We don't use that term often. And shout out to the brother Rollo, man. You guys go listen to that brother kick that game about the passport life. And happy belated birthday to that brother. We're never praised, man. And it's really making sense to me now. Black men, we don't get no praise, man. Every other group on the planet understands that praise is good for the human soul. It really is. It's good to be praised for something, man. Only the Black American male is told never to be praised and never to salute himself. So I just want to take a minute to salute the Black men of America, whatever you're doing out there, as long as it's positive and constructive, you're taking care of your business, you're doing the best you can. I don't care if you're sleeping outside tonight. Just know that you do have it in you to get it right. And there's going to be some people out there like, no, that's not true. Well, guess what? Steve Harvey slept in a goddamn car for 3 years, man. A lot of you don't even know that. In his late 20s, not talking about as a teenager. Steve Harvey, for as many things that I dislike about that brother in the way that he does business, I can never take away the fact that he's figured out a way to save himself. Just on that level, on the homelessness thing. Steve Harvey slept in a car for 3 years. He was talking about bringing tears to his eyes, talking about how for a long period of time of his life, he was actually he didn't even take showers, man. He had to go up in like the men's room and like wash his body and stuff. And he was talking about how embarrassing it was, man, when he couldn't lock the door to keep people out because he had nowhere to go. Wasn't no one coming to save Steve Harvey, but he just had like a burning desire inside to become self-actualized within that comedy field and that entertainment field, and he made it happen. So I'm just giving that example because I don't want any brother, no matter where he's at on the socioeconomic order, to think that he doesn't have hope. There's hope, man. There is definitely hope. At least I believe there is. So I just wanted to share why this cultural capital piece is so important. And when we're talking about cultural capital, we're talking about the structure of the family household, whether it be two-parent household, nuclear family, or it be an extended family, or it be a single mother-led household, or a single father-led household. But one thing I can tell you, there's something to the nuclear structure of a family and outcomes and in the way that we go about choosing who that we're going to mate with. So I won't impose my view on you all, but I'm going to share these companies. I'm going to share their founders, and I'm going to share their parents' information. And I would like to see what you all think about what you hear. So looking at like Google, we have Larry Page, one of the founders. His father was a PhD computer scientist. His mother was a college professor teaching computer science. His co-founder, Sergey Brin, professor of mathematics at the University of Maryland, and not just some entry-level, no-name professor, but an award-winning professor that after he passed away They like named a bunch of scholarships after him and departments, things like that. He was on that level. That's Sergey Brin's father. Now, who was Sergey Brin's mother? She may have actually been even more intelligent than him. She was a NASA researcher working in flight control. You understand what kind of brain power, kind of mental discipline it takes to work as a NASA researcher working on flights, and with the kind of risk that they take when they're doing like aeronautics and all that stuff. So his mother was super intelligent. So let's go to Facebook. What about Mr. Mark Zuckerberg? Where does he come from? He comes from a long line of doctors and medical field type people in his family. His father was a dentist, very well respected dentist with a thriving practice up there. I believe he was in New York. Now, his mom, she was no lightweight either. His mom was a psychiatrist in her own right. Let's look at the Uber creators. So you got Gary Kemp. His father was an economist. We don't even like to talk about economics in this space. We don't even want to admit the fact that the family is the basic economic unit. So Gary Kemp came out of his mother's womb understanding the importance of economics. From day one, he walked into a household where his father was the analytical one, teaching economics, working in economics, getting that Wall Street money, and his mother was an artist, helping him with his creative side. So just think about being a child of a situation like that, where your father is like an expert on economics, the analytical version, and then you're getting the other side of the brain from the mom, who's an artist, who's helping you to unleash your creative side. So are we surprised that a Gary Kemp would create something like Uber with that kind of background? Not me. Now, I found Netflix background story to be even more interesting than Google, Facebook, or Uber, because in the Netflix situation, you had Reed Hastings, who he comes from a family that's very prestigious, where like he had a grandfather who, this dude was like a straight up polymath, like a genius type level. This guy was his grandfather was an expert in law as an attorney, a Wall Street success. He was an inventor who owns patents. Okay. You know how hard that is to become an attorney, a whiz on Wall Street, and be an inventor? You're hitting every dimension of intellect in terms of like IQ, verbal, and all that. That was his father, his grandfather. And then his father followed in the family business. His mom, there wasn't much information on her, but at minimum, she was a well taken care of housewife doing her duties to raise the children and nurture those children's minds and bodies. Now, his co-founder, Mark Randolph, may have been even more interested in Reed Hastings. Mark Randolph, the co-founder at Netflix, guess what his father did? His father was a nuclear engineer. Not much information on his mother. But what was so fascinating about Mark Randolph, he's the grandnephew of the most famous psychologist in the last 100 years, Sigmund Freud. And also the grandnephew of Edward Bernays, who has written the most famous book on propaganda called On Propaganda, and who was one of the biggest consultants to the CIA, FBI, Madison Avenue, major corporations, the psychological field. That's the kind of prestige that he's coming from because of the way that they're mating with each other. Look, what about Snapchat? What about Evan Spiegel? How'd you get there, Evan? Oh, Evan's father was a recognized attorney. Oh, and his mother was also a lawyer as well. So imagine the kind of cultural capital that you're being born into. And that's why it's so important that we vet the women in our lives, because, man, you decide to have a children with the wrong woman, you're actually samboing against your racial lineage group. You're actually doing an act of violence against the greater Black American population to mate incorrectly and to neglect family planning. So I looked at Twitter. Jack Dorsey. Where you come from, Jack? Oh, his father's a mechanical engineer. Don't know, not enough information on his mother. But at a minimum, Jack Dorsey, one of the founders of Twitter, came from an engineering family, born into it. Okay? Microsoft. Bill Gates. We all know who Bill Gates, one of the top 5 or 6 richest men on the planet. Oh, well, Bill Gates. Why do you have an advantage over that black boy that was born into the gutter, whose family didn't teach him shit but how to wear a good pair of shoes and cut his hair? That's about it. That's all you getting started with. You 18, go out into the world and figure it out. No, that ain't what Bill Gates had to deal with. Bill Gates' father was one of the more famous attorneys up in that Northwest area, from what I read. He came from a prominent family of lawyers. But don't stop there, Bill Gates. What did your mom do, Bill Gates? Bill Gates' mother was a pioneer in corporate America for women. She was one of the few women during his prime years as a teen. She was on the board of directors of First Interstate Bank. So I just want you guys to let that sink in, man, for a second. Just let that sink in, and I'm gonna go through the final few companies that I looked into, because I think you guys are probably seeing what I'm seeing, but I'll wait till I'm done to see what you guys all think. But just think about that for a minute. Bill Gates' mother, she wasn't sitting down there using Miss Andrea against him. She wasn't sitting there telling him how he ain't shit. You just like your father. She wasn't out there trying to compete for opportunities. She was trying to widen opportunities. She made sure that he had the kind of nourishment socially and in that household that by the time he hit school, he was already on the winning track. So let me look at a couple more to share with you all. So let's go to Airbnb. Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, you know, his parents were high-level bureaucrats in the social work field. So his mom was a social worker and his father was a social worker. And being an expert on social work and sociology, it's only natural that you would know what's needed to have healthy children and to rear healthy children, because that whole sociological field is based on studying the development, structures, and functioning of human society, which starts in the household. So they study that whole thing. They study social orders and social structures. So that's what Brian Chesky of Airbnb was born into, an enriching environment. He didn't have to go. None of these people that I read about that they had to worry about the high school they went to or college. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard in his first year because he had already gained so much cultural capital by the time he was 19 that he had more than he needed. Okay? We're doing catch up right now over the last 3 generations. We're playing catch up, man. So at YouTube, which we're on right now, you had Chad Hurley. He came from a upper middle class business family. Steve Chin, he came from a Chinese upper middle class family. And I couldn't find very much information on the Indian guy with YouTube. But considering that everyone else in this list came from a similar kind of family, I assume that he did too. So the case is still out on Jawad Curran of YouTube. Now let's look at PayPal. We all see Elon Musk out there living a Rocketeer, Iron Man kind of lifestyle. Everybody wants to have the kind of lifestyle he has. Multiple successful businesses. That Cybertruck vehicle that Tesla Motors just made, it's the #1 selling vehicle in America and it hasn't even been produced yet. The orders, they have more back orders on that than they can take in the first year for that cyber truck that they created. That's your guy, Elon Musk. Well, nah, Elon Musk didn't walk out of Cabrini Green in Chicago just all willy-nilly. Nah, he came from a family that enriched him. Electric mechanical engineer was his father, and his mother was a supermodel. So because of his status of his father as an engineer, he was able to knock a supermodel. So he got a very feminine mother, and then he got a very successful masculine father. And that's why Elon Musk, that played a big role in his success. Okay, who was his co-founder? Peter Thiel. Oh, Peter Thiel, what did your father do? Oh yeah, just like Elon Musk, my father, he wasn't the mechanical, he was a chemical engineer. So that was Peter Thiel's father. Don't know much about his mother. So I got a couple more. Genentech, started by Robert Swanson. His father was an engineer. eBay. Many of you are familiar with eBay. Y'all know about eBay. You've gone on there before. Well, how did they start eBay? Oh, it didn't start with him starting the company eBay. It started with his rearing and the cultural capital. Pierre Midyar, his father was a surgeon and a urologist, okay? So he wasn't just a surgeon. I think surgeons are the highest in the medical field, but he was a urologist as well, helping men take care of their functioning. You know what I'm saying? So he was an expert in that. So I think that like doubles your income. So this dude was born into like wealth. Let's just say that. But his mom, she had it going on too. Now he's Iranian. His mother is a PhD professor in linguistics. So again, we know that one of the 8 dimensions of intelligence is verbal reasoning skills, right? So again, his father was the analytical, his mother gave him the verbal. So you're already starting off with such a cultural advantage. And he's an Iranian guy, okay? ServiceNow, the founder, Fred Luddy, his father was an accountant, taught him how to manage money, budgeting. His mother was a teacher, teaching him how to manage his time and learn. So what do you expect? You expect certain outcomes when you match up an accountant with a teacher, okay? Now, Salesforce, I thought the founder of that company was interesting as well. You guys probably seen him around. He does like a lot of politicking, named Mark Benioff from that San Francisco Bay Area. He's the founder of Salesforce. Well, Mark, where did you come from? He's a Jewish gentleman. His father is a very well-known corporate apparel franchise owner by the name of Russell Benioff, right? And he was a power player out there in San Francisco. Mark's father, Russell Benioff. So he was born into a family of apparel store owners. We have VMware. For all you tech heads out there, you know about VMware. Mendel Rosenblum, the founder. His father was a famous University of Virginia mathematics professor, award-winning. Department's named after him. Okay. These are the last 2 companies. So one of them is NVIDIA. That's a Chinese guy by the name of Jensen Huang. His father was a chemical engineer. And the last company on the list that I came up with is Palo Alto Networks. And a lot of you IT guys know about these companies. This is a guy named Nur Zook. His father was an engineer and his mother was a principal. So that's the list that I came up with to really kind of prove that this whole idea that black men are supposed to be born into the least nourishing environments and go out and compete, it's really a bullshit argument. It really is, man. Just that simple. It's a bullshit argument. But it doesn't mean that you can use it as a crutch. What it means is that you recognize how we got here and how we're not doing this shit again for the next generation. We're not doing it, man. And I know that we're not doing it because I'm talking about it right now. And I'm leaving a record that I rejected this BS. I reject black redneck culture, full-throated, 100%. It's nothing but bad outcomes that come from it. When you look at our own black billionaires, guess what? The same thing applies. Because someone will say, well, they're not black though. Okay, now you're moving the goalpost again. Because initially it was that black men are just supposed to go conquer STEM. Well, guess what? The same pattern that you saw is the same pattern that you see with other black tech billionaires and business people. Byron Allen, his mother, his father was a working class trained, I believe, electrician with Ford Motor Company, something to that extent. And his mother became like a marketing executive in Hollywood. And she was self-educated as well. So he had that connection with his family. Hey, salute to the brother AM1. Appreciate that. He says, great breakdown, King Sim. I appreciate that, bro. Anyone taking the time to listen to my 2 cents. I really do. You see the same thing with Robert F. Smith. He's black bourgeoisie. He comes from a healthy family background. There go 2 black men. What's the excuse now? You know what I'm saying? Reginald Lewis, my favorite businessman. And you guys really need to look into him since he was one of the first black men to make multi-millions on Wall Street. And he's known for doing one of the first leveraged buyouts. Robert Johnson of my grandmother's city in Mississippi, who started BET. Same thing. They came from environments where there was clear roles between men and women and that they didn't have to be opposed to each other. It didn't matter to which one of the brothers. Okay, that was It didn't matter to Sergey Brin's father that his wife might have even been more intelligent than him, because yes, he had status as a professor of mathematics, but I don't know, man. That's his wife being a NASA engineer. I don't know, man. I think that she got the advantage in that situation, man. But it didn't stop them from working together. So my whole argument is that the biggest thing facing black society is how they're going to deal with this cultural capital issue in this decade. And again, this ain't no timeless situation where you're going to just be able to sit on the sidelines anymore. Time is moving very fast and opportunities are decreasing because so much help from the state is shrinking as we move into this decade. It's going to be less help coming as things look in 2020 at least. So the time to make a decision is now. The time for play, the 80s, the 90s, that time is come and gone, man. It's time to get down to work. And it's funny that Mr. Neely Fuller talks about that. Black people celebrate things that don't need to be celebrated. Dr. Claude Anderson, what does he say? Blacks are set. He was saying 60. Wait, that brother's got to be about, man, he's up there, man. Dr. Claude Anderson has got to be about 80, man. So he's been at this for about probably 50 years. So he's been warning Black Americans that they were on a track, not the escalator to becoming self-actualized and competitive, but they were on a path to become the permanent underclass to replace the Native Americans who are almost extinct in America, right? So you may be thinking that you're going to keep playing games. You may think that you're going to keep fighting with Black men that said, I'm going to go try something different and do something for myself. But they're not the issue. That small group of Black men that's less than 30%, I've heard numbers as low as 15%, whatever it is. We won't know 100% until the census comes out at the end of the year. But we do know that the major part of the Black American population is going to be where they're at if they don't figure this shit out, man. And we already have the prism to look at that through Eugene Robinson, who gifted us with the disintegration theory. And that's the transcendent elite, the Black middle class. And what was interesting is this third class is very interesting. He puts the biracial Blacks in the same class as non-ADOS Blacks. And then there's the larger group, the abandoned poor. So that's the vision that Eugene Robinson had. I think that was 12 years ago. So when you combined all this, it kind of tells you people haven't been listening. They was warning you for the last 60 years that this moment would arrive. So don't act shocked now in the bottom of the ninth that you're down 10-0. But the game still isn't over. It's not over yet because the game's not over yet. But for larger and larger groupings of Black Americans, the game is almost over. And the people that are telling you Black woman first, they are silly because even many of the Black women don't believe that anymore. I'm seeing more and more American Black women come into this space to hear that raw. They don't like it. They don't like the delivery. They don't like the data. But there's no arguing with the fact that the data is what it is. As I was telling brothers earlier today, it did kind of surprise me when I was hearing that whole breeding out argument about the Negroid phenotype here in America, but the same individuals won't talk about the fact that Black American women are 36% of yearly abortions, which comes out to roughly, since 1973, about 20 million Black babies being aborted by the Queen of the Damned. So let that sink in for a minute. 500,000 abortions per year over the last 46 years, fellas. Ladies that happen to be listening, because according to my analytics, surprisingly, about a third of my listeners are females, which shocks me, but it's actually true. So they're listening. They know it's the truth. They know amongst their friends, a lot of abortions are happening. It's not coming out of nowhere. Overrepresented, the face of abortion is American Black women. But we want to talk about breeding out. Nearly 21 abortions in 46 years. Are we serious? And that's just on record. It could be more, but I'm sticking strictly to what the data says as presented to the House, the U.S. House in 2017. 500,000 abortions per year, okay? So I don't know what to make of it, man, because I'm not the one making this breeding out argument. But those that are making that argument, you need to let that sink in for a while. You say that you have authority over this female, so then you are the person that has to take responsibility for her actions. And you say you have authority over her, which we know that you don't, but you tell yourself that you do. She has authority over you, though, because she can take your seed and destroy it and say, I don't want to replicate you. You're a piece of shit. I'm stuck with you. Because I know that to be the case, because I've been theorizing that I actually am convinced that if those were all black and white babies, or Asian and black babies, or even Latino and black babies, probably wouldn't have been no abortions over the last 46 years. And I know that the black woman first drones are going to be real tight on that one, because they know deep down inside it's true. I would like to see them start taking statistics based on that. What was the partner's ethnic racial lineage group? I bet you will find out that 99.9% of those babies killed, it wasn't no biracial babies by those black women. So this is where the culture is at, man. This is what they wanted. This is what they got. But for me, I'm going on record saying that I understand the importance of cultural capital and the kind of skills and the kind of taste and the kind of posturing and the kind of clothing, manners, the norms, the traditions, all these kind of status indicators and the credentials, all that stuff, that all becomes part of your culture. And it all becomes part of your cultural capital if you think of it like a bank. So, I mean, it just is what it is. So when we talk about that matrix of mating and we look at the major 5 factors on how we should be choosing our mates going forward for the next generation, we got to put femininity number 1, cooperation number 2, attractiveness, loyalty, and admiration. I would say that those are the most important 5 to me. You brothers may have your own little way of looking at it, but I call it the mating matrix. And I look at femininity, attractiveness, cooperation, loyalty, and admiration. So for the ladies out there that are listening that want some clarity on that, just think of it as that each one of those criteria in that mating matrix I just mentioned, think of it as a credit card from 0 to 100. So you ask yourself, ladies, where is your femininity on a scale of 0 to 100? Where is the admiration that you have for the men that you spend the most of your time with, that you choose to mate with? Where is your loyalty to those men, 0 to 100? Where is your cooperation and what kind of peaceful present do you bring to that man? And then where are you in terms of attractiveness? And surprisingly, that ain't usually number 1 for most men, especially not most American black men. There's a lot of black men that will take a woman that her looks may be like a 4, but her cooperation is 100%. Her loyalty is like 90%. Her femininity is like 90%. A lot of black men consider that a good fucking deal versus a woman that's a 10, but she's masculine, belligerent, disloyal, promiscuous and all this type of stuff and stressing them out. Just so that's something that I'm thinking about. That's how I'm looking at the world. It's really simple. And I think that's how we should move forward. And she should look at where she scores in that mating matrix on how a man should deal with her moving forward. So the days of men validating themselves by their body counts and the notches on the bedpost and all that, not for free thinking, brothers. That ain't how we moving forward, man. And I'm only speaking for free thinking brothers that are trying to fix the cultural situation. So again, don't say, King Smith, don't be trying to put your values on me. No, I'm making a distinction for those brothers who want something different to be the reality for the black majority going forward. You're going to have to set some kind of criteria for yourself. Hey, shout out to the Gold Eagle, Dark Meteorite, Verbs in the house. Y'all go check out Verbs site, slayingevil.com. You know, at a time when we're talking so much about the SYSBM topic, I mean, that's ground zero, man. That's headquarters, him and Mad Bus Driver X. So y'all make sure y'all go show love to that brother. So yeah, that's mostly my thoughts on the whole cultural capital thing. One of the terms that Bordeaux used that stood out in my mind, he has this term called habitus, and he talks about it being like an something that becomes instinctive because of practice and repetition. And he says that what happens is that because of the way that children are socialized, that over time, what they call their preferences and their taste and values and all that is so deeply ingrained in them that they're not even consciously aware that they were culturized by their parents and the people in their community. that they take it for granted that all they would have to do is deprogram those cultural values through whatever mechanism they need to use, and they could fix a lot that's broken. And his term that he used was called habitus, Habitus. He used it in a way of like saying, like, you know how we use the word like swag or something like that. He was saying that it was like an energy, you know what I'm saying, that culture creates. And that and the problem is that it has a way of like replicating itself, you know, very quickly over time, because no one ever takes this. It's hard. And I'm not going to lie, man. It's difficult to sit back and do self-reflection. It's one of the most uncomfortable things that a person can do, man, is actually have to sit back, do an inventory on who they are, how they got there, and how they're going to fix it. And that's why I have much respect for the brother, Mr. Research, because every time I talk to him, shit, I thought I was successful, you know, just being a college graduate, always having a decent job to take care of myself and being able to just take care of myself. I thought that was success until he told me that, you know, the truth is that's not going to be enough going into this next decade. You're going to have to expand yourself. So I accept that challenge for this decade to be in a much better position than I am 10 years from now than I am today. And I'm hoping that me coming on here and having this conversation is part of that growth, because it takes a lot to have these conversations and to dig deep into it. So I'm gonna just leave it there. If there's anyone that wants to chime in, I'm willing to go for another hour. So if you want the link, I'll put my email in the chat, and we can discuss it, because I think it's a discussion worth having, and that it isn't discussed in depth enough. And I would like to see that become like a topic this year, the cultural capital piece. Hey, what up? Shout out to Charles Merchant. Atticus Now, thank you for joining. So we'll see if it's anyone available to finish out this conversation. Otherwise, I feel like, you know, I said the things that I would like to say on the topic for now. There will be more topics, but I hope that you guys got something that you could hold on to, something that's of tangible value to you as you have these conversations. Because I believe that I'm starting to see like a growing tension between the generations, specifically with boomers and Gen X and millennials. There's a little bit of tension there. And I want to help the younger men, at least on that level. I don't want older gentlemen saying to the younger men, why didn't you conquer Silicon Valley at 30 years old without giving the full story? Because the truth is, it's not like the boomers conquered Wall Street or Hollywood themselves, to be honest with you. They didn't conquer that shit either. And a lot of these black boys grew up without fathers. They don't want to talk about these things enough. It's somehow there's always this exemption on the upbringing stuff. Like it somehow gets left out of the conversation, and it's just very disturbing to me, man. Who your father and mother were is very critical to your success, man. Don't be fooled. Do not be fooled. All that we shall overcome stuff sounds great, but even Martin Luther King's father was a minister, and guess what? He became a minister. So let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Martin Luther King himself, his father was a minister, a very successful man. And I wouldn't be surprised we went down a list of many black people that we consider successful, that they had that traditional, strong background as well. And I think this does go back to something that Dr. Phoenix had pointed out to me, and I'm glad, and I appreciate that brother putting that term in my mind, the term John Henryism. I think a lot of that goes back to that as a black man, no matter how bad the poison is that you've been fed, you're supposed to use that John Henryism to endure and then get these results that everyone wants you to have. No, it don't work like that. Inputs give you certain outputs. No, I do understand that there are outliers, but they call them outliers for a reason. There's a reason why we have this term that Malcolm Gladwell has popularized called outliers. There's a reason for that. Because we can just pretty much put certain inputs in socially and get certain outputs. We know this. But people will take that outline and say, well, what about that person? That person was exceptional and they were great. And they should be heavily praised that they were able to endure and overcome those kind of trying circumstances. But we know what the ingredients that are needed to get the right cake. We know what it is, the right social cake. We know what it is. And who you choose to mate with, I didn't say fuck, I didn't say date. Those are all different things. Hooking up, having sex is much different than who you decide to mate with. Mating is a political act. Mating it can be very detrimental. Can be very detrimental. Because when you mate incorrectly, as Dr. Cress Welsing would say, the joke is on the children. What is that? Dr. Cress Welsing had this saying. She said, some to the extent, when you play with sex, the joke is on the children. And we need to spread that motto that she had. She deserves credit for what she said because it was true. So let me see. Okay, I think one of the, okay, so Epic,